Grace and peace, everybody. Grace and peace. How y'all doing tonight? I see we already got True Salvation. He's in the house. He says, gee, I hope it isn't in the sexual nature or in the... Those are going to be a couple of topics that are going to be discussed in this particular live stream. So you guys don't have to worry about that. And as you guys, man, go ahead and hit that because we are about to have a very serious discussion. We gotta have this tough discussion, and I think that this discussion hold on, he says I'm buff. I'm at a hotel Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi is not my friend right now. The hotel Wi-Fi is really not my friend. So hopefully it's gonna kick itself into gear. Hold on one second. Let me stop this real quick. Hold on. Must be a lot of people. Must be a lot of people trying to use the Wi-Fi right now. I'm trying to see if see they don't have Xfinity up here. Well, actually, where I'm at here in Kansas City. So hopefully you guys could just bear with me for a moment. Bear with the Wi-Fi. All right. So, but yeah, like I was saying, we're gonna have a pretty serious discussion tonight. Very, very serious discussion. I think that the information that's going to be brought out is going to challenge y'all. It's going to challenge what you thought about slavery and what you thought that you knew about slavery. All right? Some of the things that is going on in this country, because people done made some claims. People done built pseudo-religions off of these claims. People have used the Bible and is still using the Bible in order to promote a false ideology based on what we've heard about slavery. And not only that, these same people have said that it is because of what happened during slavery, God told them who they are. But one thing that we have to ask ourselves as we get ready to go into this particular topic is that how come God didn't tell them about this stuff if they was in fact quote unquote hearing from God? So we gonna get into it. Now I was talking to Brother Berean and a couple of guys in the back chat. And for some of you guys who may not know who Brother Berean is, he's another YouTuber. He runs a channel called Berean TV. Excellent channel. Hope you guys go and check that out. But for some of you guys who know who Berean is, we was having a discussion in the back chat. Well, actually, I just sent out a message, and I said I'm gonna do a Berean style live stream tonight. All right. So if you guys are familiar with how who Brother Berean is, how he starts stuff off, minus my little diatribe that I'm going on right now. he starts a live off and he just plays a video. He plays a few videos and he just say, hey, listen, I want to know what y'all think about this. That's how he get it started. He don't say anything. He just let it play. And he want to see what the people got to say. He let everybody come in, come up with their own thoughts, say what they got to say. And after that, he gets into the meat of the discussion, brings out sources, and then after that, he opens it up for discussion. Have some people come in and, speak their piece and give their own 2 cents about the topic. So we kind of going to do that right now. I'm going to play a couple of videos. I'm gonna play a couple of videos. Grace of Peace, Truman. Say we try to stop the awakening. God gonna stop the awakening. I ain't trying to stop nothing. But let's see what some people got to say about this. Fair use. Fair use. Y'all let me know if y'all can hear this.
Slavery is as old as human civilization, dating back beyond recorded history, and it exists even still today. Every culture on every continent practiced some form of slavery, whether it was serfdom, indentured servitude, or collective peasantry. However, when the slave trade is mentioned, people normally think of the black African slave trade to the Western Hemisphere. Yet, 6 decades before the American Civil War, a war was fought by the United States on foreign shores to try and stop the white slave trade. What was the white slave trade? Does it still exist? Who were the Barbary pirates? What was the result of American intervention? How did it occur, and what was the aftermath? And how did 9 U.S. Marines and their mercenaries make history and give birth to a legendary fighting force while also ending the white slave trade in North Africa?
I got a question for y'all. How many of y'all have heard about white slavery in America? Here in this country, on a good U.S. of A., right? Stars and stripes, 50 stars, 13 stripes. How many of y'all knew that there was white slavery that took place here? Now, I've heard about it, here and there. Some people had mentioned it. I've heard about one black guy, who was a slave owner. And we're going to get into that later. I forgot the guy's name. It's at the tip of my tongue. But there was a black man, and I think it was in Virginia. He actually was a slave owner. And I think he actually sued the government or something because they was trying to take away his slaves. And the government ended up taking away his slaves. So he actually tried to keep his slaves. He was a black man who owned other black slaves. But did you guys know that there was black slave owners who actually owned white slaves? Some of this stuff, yeah, correct. Anthony Johnson. Did y'all know? Actually, I need to look into that because my last name is Johnson, and then when I did a DNA test, my blood is very heavy in Virginia. I don't know. I may need to do some. I may need to do an ancestry DNA because the people already say that I'm suspect. They already say I move like like one of those slave drivers. They say I seem like I'm one of those house Negroes that would have been telling on the slaves. So I don't know. I need to look into that and make sure that I'm not a descendant of him. Man, if I find out I'm a descendant of Anthony Johnson, I might have to shut the video. I might have to shut my YouTube channel down. All right, but anyway, yeah. So it's a lot of information we're gonna be getting into tonight, and I'm pretty sure Sakari watching. They gonna be watching. And I'm pretty sure they're going to make a video about me after this. That's all right. I got a little bit more. I got a little bit what we call this black. I don't know. I think we're going to give out the black bottle tonight. Black bottle medicine. Fair use. Let's hear what what Mr. Thomas Sowell has to say. I know he's controversial. That good old Thomas Sowell. We can't listen to what he had to say, but let's hear. Actually, I'm gonna do this because there's some people who just came in. I'm gonna play this video one more time. I'm gonna play it one more time. Grace and peace to Brother Berean. That's him right there. I'm gonna play this video one more time because I want people who just came in to kind of get the gist of this topic. Here we go. It's only 1 minute.
Slavery is as old as human civilization, dating back beyond recorded history, and it exists even still today. Every culture on every continent practiced some form of slavery, whether it was serfdom, indentured servitude, or collective peasantry. However, when the slave trade is mentioned, people normally think of the black African slave trade to the Western Hemisphere. Yet, 6 decades before the American Civil War, a war was fought by the United States on foreign shores to try and stop the white slave trade. What was the white slave trade? Does it still exist? Who were the Barbary pirates? What was the result of American intervention? How did it occur, and what was the aftermath? And how did 9 U.S. Marines and their mercenaries make history and give birth to a legendary fighting force while also ending the white slave trade in North Africa?
All right. You played that again. Y'all heard that. You seen that. Now let's see what Brother Thomas Sowell got to say.
Slavery
Also, fair use.
has been a universal institution for thousands of years, as far back as you can trace human history. And what we're looking at is if slavery is something that happened to one race of people in one country, when in fact the spread of it was around the world. In 1776, which is when Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, as well as when the United States got started, he said that Western Europe is the only place in the world where there is no slavery. And even the Western Europeans had vast numbers of slaves in the Western Hemisphere,
Yes.
but not in Western Europe itself. And so if you're going to have reparations for slavery, it's going to be the greatest transfer of wealth back and forth. Because the number of whites, for example, who were enslaved in North Africa by the Barbary pirates exceeded the number of Africans enslaved in the United States.
That's beef. That's oh man. Brother Maria. Oh, you don't know the half. This next video clip that I'm about to play, I'm gonna play this one more time because I don't think that a lot of people heard what Brother Thomas Sowell said. I'm gonna play it one more time, just one more time. But we gonna see if Esau fit the curses, because I think people missed that last part of what Brother Thomas Sowell said. So one more time, we gotta play it. I'm sorry. Here we go. Let's do this again. Fair use.
Slavery has been a universal institution for thousands of years, as far back as you can trace human history. And what we're looking at is if slavery is something that happened to one race of people in one country, when in fact the spread of it was around the world. In 1776, which is when Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, as well as when the United States got started, he said that Western Europe is the only place in the world where there is no slavery. And even the Western Europeans had vast numbers of slaves in the Western Hemisphere,
Yes.
but not in Western Europe itself. And so if you're going to have reparations for slavery, it's going to be the greatest transfer of wealth back and forth. Because the number of whites, for example, who were enslaved in North Africa by the Barbary pirates exceeded the number of Africans enslaved in the United States.
All right. You heard that. Because I don't know. I've been hearing about a certain group of people. Actually, I got one more video I want to play for y'all. One more video before we get into our other video. Hold on one second. Let me get up out of this. But yeah, because we've been hearing some people saying that there's only a certain group of people who's about my color who went into slavery because they are the original Israelites, and that's how we know for sure that the people who look like me went into slavery because the Ruach told them that. I don't know. But y'all know this guy right here, right? Y'all know who this man is. This is Mr. Let's go ahead. I think his name is Mr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., right? He is the guy, if you guys watch like PBS and all of that, he does a lot of documentaries, especially with black people. He say, "Oh yeah. I'm already prepared for the slander after this one. They're recording it right now. I'm gonna see this clipped up tomorrow." But anyway, this is Dr. Henry Louis Gates. Now, if you guys have watched PBS, he does a lot of documentaries about black culture, black people abroad. He's even talked about how slavery, how the transatlantic slave trade has affected the population of black people in different countries, such as, of course, here the United States, the United Kingdom, Brazil, and even in Mexico, even in South America, right? So people would say that Mr. Henry Louis Gates is a credible source. You can't deny this man's scholarship, and you can't deny the information that he puts out. So this ain't just some guy on the internet rambling and ranting and raving. You can see where he's on C-SPAN. The man is on C-SPAN. So, yeah. I don't know. Let's just go ahead and hear what Brother Henry Louis Gates has to say about slavery. Fair use.
All these black, we exaggerate how many black people ran away to the North Star. Even John Hope Franklin, at most, counted 50,000. And that includes people who would just run down to the swamp, hide out for the night, and then come back. It was hard to millions of black people on the Underground Railroad. We tend to think of the Underground Railroad like Penn Station, a Grand Central Station. It wasn't like that. It was incredibly difficult to escape from slavery. And as you know, Mr. Black, many of the free Negroes stayed in the South. Do you know in the 1860 census, there were 440,000 about free Negroes. I mentioned that earlier. More than half lived in the states that were the Confederacy and the border states where slavery was free. And they stayed there, ladies and gentlemen, unmolested, including my family in eastern West Virginia. They
hold on. Nah, I know he ain't go there. He said that majority of the slaves, majority of black folks, once they became free from slavery, they stayed in the South. In the Jim Crow South, unmolested. So it wasn't like white folks was out there running amok, snatching up any young black woman that they wanted, that they can get their hands on. All of the stuff that we've been taught in school about Jim Crow South, all of the propaganda that we see on the internet. Let me hush.
They stayed there because that's where they had their family and that's where they had their property. Remember, their property they had to be given property in Virginia and many of these other southern states. What are they going to do? Go to New York? Live in Harlem? Hang out and listen to jazz with Dizzy, Charlie Parker? They stayed where they were raised. And many of them, this is the worst, the dirtiest secret in African American history, is that a surprisingly high percentage of the free Negroes in the South owned slaves themselves. We explain it.
No. He didn't just say that. No. Let me take him off for a minute. Oh. Oh, Chris Biber said that's true. Oh, man. Listen, I'm gonna tell y'all. Anybody, I'm gonna warn y'all right now tonight. If y'all are agreeing with me tonight, they taking your black card. They taking your black card. Don't follow me. They been stripped mine. They done called me raccoon out and all of that. Hey, they say, man, I bought. They say I'm like Rocket Raccoon from what's that movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. Don't follow me and get your black card revoked tonight. I'm sorry, but we gotta get that black bottle tonight. We gotta get that black bottle. I don't know. Let's back this up just a couple of seconds. I think we gotta hear this one more time.
A high percentage of the free Negroes in the South owned slaves themselves. And some of them owned, we explain it away by saying, oh, but they only own their mother, or they only own, yeah, they own their mother, they own their sister, they own their wife, and they own some other workers too. A surprisingly high number owned workers who they did not liberate throughout the South. There were enough black free Negroes who supported the Confederacy that they voluntarily formed a regiment. No.
No. Come on, brother. Oh, man. Boy, that black bottle is hard. Ooh, boy. That black bottle got some, it got some strong medicine in it tonight. Oh, man. Oh, listen, y'all ain't heard nothing yet. Y'all ain't heard nothing yet. Now remember, again, this is Brother Henry Louis Gates. I don't think anybody can call this man pseudo. Nobody can say that this man is unlearned. This man is a Harvard University history professor. This is what he does. Folks pay him to come and speak. I hope y'all are not eating and drinking right now. I don't know. We got to get it, y'all. We got to get this medicine tonight. Fair use.
Confederacy. And black Confederate troops are featured on the cover of Harper's Weekly in 1863. Frederick Douglass used this as an argument to make Lincoln allow black men to fight. Wow. Because remember, Lincoln didn't want to do it. Lincoln made a famous statement in 1862. He said, I suppose we could arm them, but if we did, their arms would end up in the hands of the Confederates within a week, because he thought that they were incompetent, not smart enough to win. And eventually, as I said, the North was losing the war. Frederick Douglass was agitating, and this book by Casemore persuaded him to change his mind, and incrementally. So again, it's not only the myth makers who created the idealized Lincoln. We have our own myth makers in the African American historical establishment. All the Egyptians looked like Michael Jordan. All our people were black gods and kings.
You shut your mouth right now, Mr. Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates. You shut your mouth. Can't be having all of that. Come on. Y'all know we was kings and queens. Y'all think I got this tattoo for nothing? Boy, this motherland right here. Come on. We birthed this. I'm sorry. We got to keep it going, y'all. This medicine ain't good going down, and I'm sorry. But we need it. Fair use.
It wouldn't be a slave trade. Africans sold other Africans to white people. That was the slave trade. That's the first thing we honestly have to admit. Remember the story of Livingston, Dr. Livingston? Sure. The reason that was so important is that almost no white men had penetrated the interior of Africa. What was there? No roads, snakes, mosquitoes, death, malaria, right? the white people were along the coast. It was black kingdoms like Queen Njinga's kingdom in Angola. What's now Angola? Ghana, Dahomey. They grew rich from the slave trade, selling other Africans. They would go and wage wars just to sell other black people to white people. This is something we've been so ashamed about, we pretend that it's not true. It is the nasty, dirty secret of African American history. We are just as corrupt and despicable as any other people. And if we have the right to oppress, we will oppress just like the white man oppressed us. That is human nature. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And the only way to overcome that is to be honest about it. Is to be honest about it, admit the truth, and then all try to do better. As my main man, guy I admire so much, Cornel West, says, we're all...
Nah. Hold on, Henry. Hold on, Mr. Gates. Harvard professor of Harvard University. Come on now. You know that we are the most purest race on the planet. We the original man. We didn't start sinning until that white man crawled out of them Caucasus Mountains 6,000 years ago. He up here spew. I don't know what he doing. I don't know what he talking about, man.
Recovering races. We're recovering. We're all recovering races.
Dr. Gates has to leave.
Thank you. Thank you.
Timmy. Dr. Gates has to leave, so there will be no more questions. I'm terribly sorry. I could sit here for hours. I feel enlightened. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, listen, y'all heard that and you seen that. Now, once again, like I said, Brother Henry Louis Gates is a Harvard professor. And I don't know when he did this particular sit down, but it looks like it was something that was done quite a while ago. So this is information that's been out here. Okay? So information that's been out here, people been having these conversations, but we have to ask ourselves a question. How come these things have not been put out? How come this is not common knowledge? Some of this stuff I just found out a couple of days ago, like this next clip I'm about to play. Just heard about some of this yesterday. Some of this stuff I kind of heard about in passing. I didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went. I knew it went pretty deep. I didn't know it went this deep. Listen, I'm going to warn y'all right now. I hope you guys are not eating or drinking when I play this. And I'm not saying that because anybody's going to be grossed out or, anything like that. Because when I play this clip, if you are eating something and you drinking something, some of the information that's going to be brought out in this little 5-minute video, it's going to make you choke on what you're eating or drinking. Put the forks down. Put the drinks down. Whew. I hope y'all ready. Fair use.
This is the Burrow House, a plantation home in tiny Stateburg, South Carolina, about 10 miles west of Sumter. It has been the site of many Forrest Gump-like moments. General Thomas Sumter lived here. Former Governor Stephen Miller lived here. Joel Poinsett, for whom the poinsettia is named, died here. Even Samuel Maverick, whose son became the namesake for the term independent rebel, owned this house on the property.
A lot of really important but not splashy historic people have wandered through here.
Perhaps the quietest of them all has arguably the most important story to tell. It began here in 1935 when 3 young girls discovered a stack of letters while playing in the basement of this home. Those letters, now held at USC's Caroliniana Library, tell the story of a slave named April.
There's been a really good job of whitewashing a very awkward discussion.
It's a huge...
Uh-oh. There go that word, whitewashing. Ooh, how many times would I heard that? All right, this man said it's been some whitewashing going on. Let's see how much whitewashing been going on. Fair use.
Hugely awkward discussion.
In 1802, a white plantation owner named William Ellison lent one of his young slaves, April, to work for a gin maker in Winnsboro. April quickly became the go-to man for repairing the expensive cotton gins throughout the Sumter area.
They send him out to the plantations and they take them apart. He would sharpen them on location. And that's why he heard about Statesburg. He came through here as a young man, and he said, well, when he bought his freedom or whatever, he came here.
The center of plantation country, the wealthiest area of South Carolina. He changed his name. April was now known as William Ellison, the name of his former white owner. His gin business prospered. He bought this home, hundreds of acres of land, and eventually 68 slaves to work that land. Granger McCoy now lives in the Ellison home and says he often finds old cotton gin blades.
What do the Ellisons say when they come?
They looking for the home place.
All descendants of what many of us thought an impossible oxymoron, a black slave owner.
I had a black ophthalmologist come through here, Ellison, and we sat on this couch right here. And his great-great-granddaddy owned 68 slaves, and here I am, white, over here, and my great-great-granddaddy didn't own any slaves, and it...
Nope. I can't believe that. I can't believe that a black man owned more slaves than this white man right here. I think that's false news. What y'all think? What y'all think? Because you let some of these folks tell it, oh, every white person that's here on this particular planet, or I'm sorry, here in America, every white person owns slaves. And this is a good old southern white man right here, so you know his family had slaves, right? Oh yeah, Roger Sherman says an Israelite was slaves. No, the Israelites was the ones who went into captivity. No Israelite had slaves because that's not in the prophecy. Oh man, here we go.
It was like somebody blew a dog whistle in a kennel. Everybody just kind of turning their head, not knowing how to handle all this.
History tumbles you.
And what little we can learn about Ellison as a slave owner isn't pretty. The book Black Masters chronicles Ellison's life in the antebellum South and suggests that his slaves were the worst fed and clothed of any in Statesburg. It also suggests that Ellison was a slave breeder, selling off infant girls, a practice even some white owners found cruel. Whatever the case, Ellison certainly had a good relationship with other white aristocracy. This contract shows that Ellison didn't just buy a home in wealthy Statesburg, he bought it directly from former Governor Stephen Miller, a governor and former slave trading property. He was the wealthiest black man in South Carolina, the fourth wealthiest in the South, wealthier than more than 90% of whites. Just a few hundred yards from the Ellison home,
I told y'all. This black bottle medicine wasn't going to go down smooth tonight. This man just said that he was wealthier, a black man in America during slavery who had slaves, and they said that he treated his own black slaves so bad that even the white people was just like, yo, they ain't even want, they couldn't even believe it. The wealthiest black man in America during slave time was doing the worst to other black folks as slaves. Israelites say that they are the people that came from Africa and they were the slaves here. They didn't sell anybody. They was the people that was being sold and raped and being treated badly and all of that. So I gotta ask a question. Is this man, is he an Israelite? Is this what Israelites do? Because this kills that whole Deuteronomy 28:68 prophecy. This man, during slave time, bought a house from a governor. This man had more wealth than a lot of the white people around him at that time. Now, remember what the guy said at the beginning. He said that there's a lot of whitewash history, especially about this particular topic. So that begs the question, why is this part of history washed out? Why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody talking about this? Fair use. We still got a little bit more left.
Is the Ellison graveyard, private, neither mixed with other white nor black tombstones, symbolic of his unusual position in the pre-war South, a position so few of us even knew existed.
Whatever happened during Reconstruction and then up through the Jim Crow era, anything and everything that had to deal with the relationships between the blacks and the whites just went underground.
And may have remained so, if not for a stack of letters found under his house. For Hidden Columbia, Anderson Burns, ABC Columbia News.
What say ye on any of that? What do y'all got to say about that? Oh, man. Like I said, I don't think I've heard of William Ellison. Before yesterday, and it was actually a TikTok video that I saw. It was a short that I saw. Somebody was talking about William Ellison, so I had to look it up. I ain't never heard of him. But I was gonna play that TikTok video, but the guy, he was using some language, and I don't wanna play that because there was some this is a family show, so I don't want to be playing anybody with that language. So I decided that, hey, I'll play these other videos instead. I was gonna read something. Let me excuse me. Let me see if I can read a little bit of this. Kind of give some context to William Ellison. And Chris Spivey, I guess Chris Spivey is aware of William Ellison, so he has done his research. Shout out to Chris Spivey, who is in the chat right now. I'll go ahead and read the first part of this article on Wikipedia. Now we know that Wikipedia, sometimes they can have some stuff that's a little off. And I need Chris Spivey to let me know, is some of this stuff off, or is it all true? All right, so this is Wikipedia. I didn't have time to go to another website and do a whole bunch of research. I kind of did this off the fly. So it says William Ellison Jr. is born April 1790 to December 5th, 1861. Born April Ellison was a U.S. cotton gin maker and blacksmith in South Carolina, and former African-American slave who achieved considerable success as a slave owner before the American Civil War. He eventually became a major planter, and one of the median property owners, and one of the wealthiest property owners in the state. According to the 1860 census, in which his surname was listed as Ellerson, he owned up to 68 black slaves, making him the largest of the 171 black slaveholders. 171 black slaveholders. Okay, let me read that one more time. He owned up to 68 black slaves, making him the largest of the 171 black slave holders in South Carolina. So just in South Carolina alone, there was 171 black slave holders. Man. Oh yeah, Paris. Yeah, he wasn't the only one. Let's continue. He held 63 slaves at his death and more than 900 acres of land. From 1830 to 1865, he and his sons were the only free blacks in Sumter County, South Carolina, to own slaves. The county was largely devoted to cotton plantations, and the majority population were slaves. Ellison and his sons were among a number of successful free people of color in the antebellum years, but Ellison's master had passed on social capital by apprenticing him to learn a valuable artisan trade as a cotton gin maker, at which Ellison made a success. He took a wife at the age of 21 after buying his own freedom when he was 26. A few years later, Ellison purchased his wife and their children to protect them from sales as slaves. The Act of 1820 made it more difficult for slaveholders to make purchasable manumissions, but Ellison gained freedom for his sons and a quasi-freedom for his surviving daughter. During the American Civil War, Ellison and his sons supported the Confederate States of America and gave the government substantial donations and aid. A grandson fought informally with the regular Confederate Army and survived the war. How many people knew this? Be honest, let's be honest. Type of 1 if a lot of y'all, if y'all knew this. Type of 2 if y'all did not know this. I got my 2 up. I didn't know this. So remember what we've been taught. We've been taught the wicked white man went into Africa, round up a whole bunch of black folks, enslaved them for 400 years. Black people had no rights. They had no freedom. They had nothing. Okay. There's some people said that they already knew. All right. Brother Roger. All right. Brother JT Mack, he said too bad they survived the war. Shoot. Oh man. But I'm telling you, listen, the propaganda is real. The propaganda is real. Racism makes money. Always remember that. All of this racial stuff, look at Black Lives Matter. Look at all of that money that they made. And what do they do for the black community? Nothing. Actually, there's articles that have gone out that said that the black communities that they went and marched through are worse off than they were before Black Lives Matter got there. That's why y'all can't be swayed by all of this racial stuff. People appealing to your emotions. Oh, the white man came and he did the worst atrocities on the face of the planet against our people. And then you have the wealthiest black slave owner in South Carolina during the time of slavery who treated his slaves so badly that even the white ones thought that what he was doing was totally wrong. Even they thought that what he was doing, the way he treated his slaves, was just way out of pocket. But we got some more bottle. Actually, I think we're going to get some of this from what we call the white bottle, right? That's what they call the white bottle. Let's go ahead and stop this one, and we're going to share this one. Let me see. Should I read this one? Yeah, let's go ahead and read this one. Why not? Now let's talk about these European slaves. Now, this was an article that was written back in March 7, 2004. It says, when Europeans were slaves, research suggests white slavery was much more common than previously believed. Okay. That's the editor's note. It said a new study suggests that 1 million or more European Christians were enslaved by Muslims in North Africa between 1530 and 1780. A far greater number than had ever been estimated before. In a new book, Robert Davis, professor of history at Ohio State University, developed a unique methodology to calculate the number of white Christians who were enslaved along Africa's Barbary Coast, arriving at much higher slave population estimates than any previous studies had found. Now, I'm going to stop right here for a minute because I want to let you guys know I have to read this part because the next clip that I'm going to play is going to kind of give more context, because this article gives more context to the clip that I'm going to play, because the next clip is only about 8 minutes long and it doesn't really cover as much as this particular article is covering. All right, so bear with me. Most other accounts of slavery along the Barbary Coast didn't try to estimate the number of slaves or only looked at the number of slaves in particular cities, Davis said. Most previously estimated slave counts have thus tended to be in the thousands or at most in the tens of thousands. Davis, by contrast, has calculated that between 1 million and 1.25 million European Christians were captured and forced to work in North Africa from the 16th to 18th centuries. They the people, y'all. They the people. That's it. They the people. I don't know. I don't know. Let's continue to read this. Oh, and by the way, this is the Ohio State University website. So this is not a Christian website that is putting this information out. So this is a secular website. All right. But let's continue. Davis's new estimates appear in the book Christian Slaves, Muslim Masters, White Slavery in the Mediterranean, the Barbary Coast, and Italy, 1500 to 1800. Quote, much of what has been written gives the impression that there were not many slaves and minimizes the impact that slavery had on Europe, Davis said. Most accounts only look at the slavery in one place, or only for a short period of time. But when you take a broader, longer view, the massive scope of this slavery and its powerful impact become clear, end quote. Davis said it is useful to compare this Mediterranean slavery to the Atlantic slave trade that brought black Africans to the Americas. Over the course of the 4 centuries, the Atlantic slave trade was much larger. About 10 to 12 million black Africans were brought to the Americas. But from 1500 to 1650, when transatlantic slaving was still in its infancy, more white Christian slaves were probably taken to Barbary than black African slaves to the Americas, according to Davis. Quote, one of the things that both the public and many scholars have tended to take as given is that slavery was always racial in nature, that only blacks have been slaves. But that is not true, Davis said. We cannot think of slavery as something that only white people did to black people, end quote. During the time period Davis studied, it was religion and ethnicity as much as race that determined who became slaves. Quote, enslavement was a very real possibility for anyone who traveled in the Mediterranean or who lived along the shores in places like Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal, and even as far north as England and Iceland, he said. Pirates called corsairs from cities along the Barbary Coast in North Africa, cities such as Tunis and Algiers would raid ships in the Mediterranean and Atlantic, as well as seaside villages, to capture men, women, and children. The impact these attacks were devastating. France, England, and Spain each lost thousands of ships, and long stretches of the Spanish and Italian coast were almost completely abandoned by their inhabitants. At its peak, the destruction and depopulation of some areas probably exceeded what European slavers would later inflict on the African interior. Although hundreds of thousands of Christian slaves were taken from Mediterranean countries, Davis noted the effects of Muslim slave raids felt much further away. It appears, for example, that most of the 17th century, the English lost at sea 400 sailors a year to the slavers. These dudes was taking people off of ships and enslaving them. See, that's why I say that, listen, but before people start making these claims and they just start saying stuff and people just start, just jumping on bandwagons and saying that, oh, well, this is what happened, and oh, this is, the white man has created way more atrocities on the planet than anyone else. Have you actually read and studied and looked at things from both sides? Or do you basically just hear what somebody has to say on a YouTube video and then you run with it? Or somebody hand you a pamphlet, like back in the day, people hand you a pamphlet, hand you a DVD, or hand you a VHS tape. Back in the day, that's how I kind of got swayed into that whole Black Power movement stuff, at the barbershop. Oh, brother, you want to know about your history? DVD, man, pass your DVD. How much is that? Oh, man, don't worry about it. That's free. It's time for all people to get educated. Learn how to read history from all sides to see what other people gotta say. Hey, listen, somebody block Roger. I'm just playing. All right, let's continue to read. We almost done with this. Okay, here we go. Even Americans were not immune. For example, one American slave reported that 130 other American seamen had been enslaved by the Algerians in the Mediterranean and Atlantic between 1785 and 1793. Davis said that the vast scope of slavery in North Africa has been ignored and minimalized, in large part because it is on no one's agenda to discuss what happened. That's beef. The enslavement of Europeans doesn't fit the general theme of European world conquest and colonialism that is central to scholarship on the early modern era, he said. What I told you. Many of the countries that were victims of slavery, such as France and Spain, would later conquer and colonize the areas of North Africa where their citizens were once held as slaves. Maybe because of this history, Western scholars thought of the Europeans primarily as quote-unquote evil colonists and not as the victims they sometimes were, Davis said. Davis said another reason that the Mediterranean slavery has been ignored or minimalized has been that there have not been good estimates of the total number of people enslaved. People of the time, both Europeans and the Barbary Coast slave owners, did not keep detailed, trustworthy records of the number of slaves. In contrast, there are extensive records that document the number of Africans brought to the Americas as slaves. So Davis developed a new methodology to come up with reasonable estimates of the number of slaves along the Barbary Coast. David found that the best records available indicating how many slaves were at a particular location at a single time. He then estimated how many new slaves it would take to replace slaves as they died, escaped, or were ransomed. Quote, the only way I could come up with hard numbers is to turn the whole problem upside down. Figure out how many slaves they would have to capture to maintain a certain level, he said. It is not the best way to make population estimates, but it is the only way with the limited records available, end quote. Putting together such sources of attrition as deaths, escapes, ransomings, and conversions, Davis calculated that about 1/4 of slaves had to be replaced each year to keep the slave population stable, as it apparently was between 1580 and 1680. That meant about 8,500 new slaves had to be captured each year. Overall, this suggests nearly 1 million slaves would have to be taken captive during this period. Using the same methodology, Davis has estimated as many as 475,000 additional slaves were taken in the previous and following centuries. The result is that between 1530 and 1780, there are almost certainly 1 million, and quite possibly as many as 1.25 million white European Christians enslaved by Muslims of the Barbary Coast. I don't know, but as I'm reading this, all I'm getting is Deuteronomy 28 in my head. Deuteronomy 28:68. That's just a scripture that keeps popping up. I don't know. Because see, these people can basically take the same scriptures that the Hebrew Israelites are taking and applying it to them. And they can say, hey, we got history of this. We got documented history of this. So that's why when people come out here and they say, oh, I got scripture, I got precepts. Yeah, people got precepts and they got scriptures as well. So who's right? Who are we going to lean on? You or them? And if these people decide that, hey, we the people based on Deuteronomy 20 and 68, and they got paperwork behind it, come on. Let's continue. We're almost done with this particular article. And I'm going to let y'all listen to something else. Davis said his research into the treatment of these slaves suggests that for most of them, their lives were every bit as difficult as that of slaves in America. Quote, as far as daily living conditions, the Mediterranean slaves certainly didn't have it better, he said. While African slaves did grueling labor on sugar and cotton plantations in the Americas, European Christian slaves were often worked just as hard and as lethally in quarries, in heavy construction, and above all, rowing the corsair galleys themselves. Davis said his findings suggest that this invisible slavery of European Christians deserves more attention from scholars. Quote, we have lost the sense of how large enslavement could loom for those who lived around the Mediterranean and the threat they were under, he said. Slaves were still slaves. Slaves were still slaves, whether they are black, white, and whether they suffered in America or North Africa. Man. I'm telling you, boy, this medicine is going down. But listen, y'all need it. We all need this medicine. We all need this medicine. Yep. Truman says justice doesn't discriminate. We're talking about the evil of man's heart. Period. The Bible says that man's heart is inherently wicked, and who can understand it? That's why when people be trying to push this whole narrative of, the white man enslaved all of the black people, and black people ain't never enslaved nobody, and it's just a white man this and a white man that, and white man ain't never been enslaved in chains. And it's too much history out there. So are you trying to hold on to a bias that you have? Or are you willing to go out and seek truth? Are you really seeking truth? Or are you just being an echo chamber? Let's listen to this clip right here that I got. Let's listen to this clip. This is from NPR. And this is a guy who wrote. Actually, I think that this particular lady, she's going to introduce this guy. Y'all let me know if y'all can hear this. Fair use.
I'm Farai Chidea, and this is News and Notes. Many people know Britain was involved with the slave trade, but did you know that some white Europeans were taken to America as slaves as well? The slavery of Europeans was a prelude to the mass slavery of Africans in the Americas, says our next guest, Michael Walsh. He's the co-author of White Cargo, a new book about the harsh and surprising reality of indentured servitude in colonial America. Michael, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So you paint a vivid picture of someone named Sir John Popham. Tell us about him, when and how he lived, and his influence on sending Europeans to literal or virtual slavery in the U.S.
He was the chief law officer under Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth. He had a colourful background. He'd been a highwayman, and somehow he got away with it. He was a venal, corrupt politician, and one of his issues was the scum of England. He wanted to get rid of them. He wanted to get rid of vagabonds and street children and beggars, and they called them the surplus, and there was great fear amongst the rulers of England that this surplus would take over, so they wanted somewhere to dump them. And Sir John Popham cleared the jails to try and start a colony in New England. He failed. His ship turned back. It didn't turn back. It was captured by the Spanish. And meantime, another colony was taking root in Virginia. But a few months later, Sir John's ship did reach New England, and a colony was begun. It was a flop because they were looking for gold. They found no gold. And then the news came through that Sir John had died. So all his colonists, most of whom were forced labor convicts, they came back to England and they hoped freedom. There was no Sir John waiting to roast them alive, as he might have done. So he, if you like, in a way started English colonization.
Sort
in
of
America.
the intellectual or business father of this, but he himself did not survive, but the practice did survive. And I want to ask for some distinctions here. You have different terms in the book: slaves, indentured servants, and what you call free willers. I'm intrigued by the concept of a free willer. Who were they, and what did they get from essentially putting themselves in servitude?
Well, that's what they put themselves in servitude. They were desperate. They were poor people, or people who didn't have enough money to pay for the trip to America. They wanted a new life. They hoped that they would get one in America. And so they signed themselves away, their freedoms away, as indentured servants to pay for their passage. And that would be for anything between 3 and 11 years, usually. Now, most of them initially didn't survive more than a couple of years. The first... The average, I think, lifespan of a new indentured servant in the 1620s was probably 2 years. So these were called at the time free willers because they went of their free will, and so many others didn't go of their free will. They were sent there. They were sent there in chains. They were sentenced to go there. They weren't free at all. Well, nor were these people. So that's the free willers. They are indentured servants.
What about the relationship of the white indentured servants to the African or African descendant slaves? How did they get along, and how did the people who were essentially their masters treat them differently, if they did?
They did treat them differently. They got along surprisingly well, given what we hear these days. According to some African-American historians, they got on. There was no sign or little sign of racial tension between the English servants, which we reckon were slaves, and the African servants, who are also called servants, they were treated in much the same way for many decades. They complained together, they ran away together, they rebelled together. There was a huge explosion of discontent in 1676, the Bacon Rebellion. That was black and white, and that terrified the plantation owners. So they got on very well for a long time. Okay, they saw themselves as suffering in common, and therefore they fought, as I say, against their oppressors together. But in the end, their oppressors got terrified of black and white amity at this lowest level, and therefore a racial wedge was deliberately pushed between them. And the whites were made to feel superior. They were given a few rights, they still weren't freed, and the blacks were made to feel, they were told they were inferior, and they lost all their rights.
One story I've heard in the past is that it was easier to catch black slaves because they were black and you could identify them, as opposed to people who were, fair-skinned, who you wouldn't be as sure whether or not they were a landholder or an indentured servant. Is that part of the issue here?
Yeah, that's true. You had lots and lots of runaways on both sides. Just on the week of Lexington, the beginning of your War of Independence, the Revolutionary War, there were ads in the Virginia Gazette for runaways, and I think there were that week there were something like 11 for white runaways and 3 for black runaways, and 2 of the 11 white runaways were being advertised for by George Washington.
Wow.
There were a lot of people involved in this trade, the good and the bad, the great and the small. And there were terrible things that happened to both black and white. We're not saying that the whites ever suffered quite as much as the worst treated blacks. They weren't castrated. They didn't lose a limb for running away, but they were beaten. They had red hot needles plunged through their tongues. There was a girl, one of the first white children to be bundled up in 1618 and sent to America, supposedly for a new life. In fact, to be sold to plantation owners. She was called Elizabeth Abbott, and she was one of the few who survived the rigors of the first couple of years, because of the first 300 of these children, only 12 survived that we know about, more than 3 or 4 years. She was one of them, and a few years later she was found dying because she'd run away too often, and her owner had ordered her to be given 500 lashes. The owner was never found guilty of anything.
We only have a very short amount of time. What do you think we need to learn from this history?
I think you need to learn that you're a great nation. You've survived the most awful beginnings, but that indentured servants, the poor, were part of your heritage, and you don't recognize it, I don't think. I scoured America for heritage organizations, and there are lots for every kind of newcomer in the first cooks, the first sheriffs, the first bakers. Their descendants all have heritage clubs or associations. There's none, as far as I could see, for the first indentured servants, and millions of white Americans are descended from these unfortunates.
Well, look forward to learning more about this, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
We've been speaking with Michael Walsh. He is the co-author of the book White Cargo, The Forgotten History of Britain's White Slaves in America, and he joined us by phone from London.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working
All right, what say ye on that? What say ye on that? I want to know what y'all think about that. I put the link out there just in case a couple people want to jump on. I think that I got a couple more things that I do want to cover, and if nobody jumps on, and I'm just gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But yeah, I want y'all to give me some feedback on that, of what we've been talking about tonight, about this whole topic of white slaves. You know, like I said, a lot of this stuff I didn't even know until yesterday. Some of the stuff, like I said, I had heard about. Some of the stuff I had no idea, you know. So I just wanted to go ahead and bring that out because we know that right now, especially within the black community, and it's starting to become popular, not just here in America, but even abroad, about the whole Hebrew Israelite thing. You know, there's been a lot of that talk about people being the true, or black people being the true people of Israel, based on Deuteronomy 28 and 68, based on based on slavery, this ideology of black people suffering in chattel slavery. But nobody talks about the slavery that black people in America, that they perpetuated themselves while they were living in the time when the slave trade was happening. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the blacks who actually owned white slaves. So these are things that we have to discuss. So when people say, well, why is your energy so hardcore for Israelites and you just hate your own people? It's like, no, I hate lies. I want to be about truth. And as Christians, we need to stand on truth. We need to stand on truth. So what I want to do is I got a couple of questions I want to ask. Because I know that the Hebrew Israelites are watching. I know Sakari SGT, Sakari Sargent, is watching. Especially him. I want him to answer some questions because he's watching this. If he ain't watching it now, he gonna replay this and he gonna watch it. He gonna turn around and make another video. So this is the questions that I want to ask. That I want to ask him and other Israelites, based on this particular topic that we covered tonight. First of all, what does the prophecy say about Israelites owning other Israelites, right? And them owning white people during their quote-unquote captivity. What does the prophecy say about that? Does the prophecy say anything about Israelites owning Israelites and Edomites during their time of captivity? Because I haven't heard it. In the past, what is about 3-4 years I've been dealing with the Hebrew Israelite community, I had never heard them say that they was going to be doing this because they were in captivity. And that the Edomites ran and owned everything, so that's why they can't prosper and advance. But we just heard about William Ellison, the wealthiest black man, arguably, at that time in South Carolina. He had more wealth than a lot of the Edomites, the quote-unquote Edomites at that time. And actually, he treated his fellow Israelite slaves worse than what the Edomites did. I need scripture for that, Israelites. I need scripture for that. Got another question for you. Is it a white man's conspiracy that these particular topics are not being discussed? Is this another conspiracy of the white man to hide the history about black people, aka Israelites, owning other Israelites and Edomites? Is this whitewash history? Why would the white man want to hide black people owning other black slaves and white slaves here in America during the time of the transatlantic slave trade? Need that answer. Got another question. If the Lord revealed to you that you were Israel based on the slave trade, but failed to mention to you that Israelites also own slaves as well during your captivity, was that the Most High who revealed that to you, or was that something else? If it was the Most High, how come the Most High didn't tell you that there was a prophecy and give you scripture, book, chapter, and verse about Israelites owning other Israelites during the captivity, during the persecution. So, are the Israelites who own the other Israelites and Edomites, are they still up under the curse? Did they still fit the same curses? Now, I know that they probably going to run and say, well, if you go ahead and look at this precept and you look at that precept and then you take this scripture over here and Frankenstein it and put it over here, oh, they're going to come out with some type of excuse. And I'm pretty sure it's something that we ain't never heard before, because they ain't never said anything about blacks owning other blacks or Israelites owning other Israelites and Edomites during their captivity. How about this question? Were the black slave owners, right, who owned the Israelites, were they Israelites or were they something else? Those black men who owned other black people, was it a black Israelite owning other black Israelites? Or was it like a Hamite that was owning Israelites? Because remember, William Ellison was a slave himself. So technically, he would have been an Israelite. So if he was an Israelite, because remember, he fit the curse. He fit the curse because he came away. He was born into captivity. According to Deuteronomy 28:68. He ended up being free. And then he turned around and owned other Israelites and treated them worse than the Edomites. It wasn't just him. It was 171 of them at the time in South Carolina alone. So those 171 black slave owners, were they Israelites or was they something else? I got one last question for y'all. Is the white man also Israel because he suffered the curses? I need an answer to that. Because if we just read all of this history about white people who have been suffering in slave trades, especially in the Barbary Coast, they even talked about how some of them white folks was brought from Africa to the Americas to be slaves. Do they fit the Deuteronomy 28:68 curse? Or is that something else? Can you show me book, chapter, and verse where that distinction is made between white folks and black folks, or Edomites and aka Israelites? Gotta answer these questions. But before we get up out of here, let's do ourselves a favor. Excuse me. Let's break out a precept. Let's go ahead and bring out one of these precepts. Read. That's what the Bible says about slavery, chattel slavery. Exodus 21:16. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him shall be put to death. It's a commandment. Shall be. Like it says, thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do that. It's the same thing. There's no exceptions. Right? Let's read it again, because I don't think that y'all understand that. It's from the Bible. This is from the law, the Torah. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death. Doesn't even make a distinction. It doesn't say except for an Israelite. An Israelite can take another Israelite and sell him, and then it'll be okay. Or an Israelite can sell an Edomite. No, it says a man. A man cannot do those things, period. Whether you Israelite, Edomite, Gentile, whatever. At that time, if you did that, you were put to death. No questions asked. Let's get another precept out here. Read. Proverbs 18 and 17. And it reads, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. Let me read that again. It says, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. That's why we cannot be diving head first into a lot of these conspiracies, into a lot of trash and garbage that a lot of people are promoting, especially here on these YouTube streets, especially here on the internet. All of this information that you guys be getting on the internet, take it with a grain of salt. Do your research. It's like these Hebrew Israelites and all of these people of these black identity cults, they want us to do our research. They need to do their research as well. Because if they're about truth, then how come they haven't told us about these things? How come y'all ain't tell us about the white folks the white folks who were in the slave trade, who suffered in the slave trade, as well as black folks? How come y'all ain't bring that up? How come y'all ain't talking about April Ellison or William Ellison? I ain't never heard Farrakhan mention that. I have not heard one Hebrew Israelite mention that. What Bishop Nathaniel at? Where's Sakari at? Sakari, where y'all at? How come y'all ain't told us about no William Ellison? Y'all do all of this talking, make all of these videos, slandering, calling people coons and all of these derogatory names, but y'all ain't putting this information out. How come y'all are not feeding the people this? How come this bootlicking coon Christian Alton has to come out live and put this information out? And y'all supposed to be feeding our people. It's because the people are frauds. These folks are frauds. That's why you can't be listening to these liars, man. It's a lot of liars and devils out here. It's a lot of liars and devils out here on YouTube. And that's why we have to continue to look at the information, and we gotta be fair. We gotta be weighing with even scales. We gotta be even. Yeah, there's some stuff that the Christian church has done, and it's wicked. It's a lot of stuff that's been done in the name of Christ. Oh, trust me, the Christian church got some blood on its hands as well. And you better believe we've talked about it and we've discussed it. It's not something that we're proud of. It's not something that we're ashamed of. I mean, it's something that some of us are ashamed of, you know. Y'all know I roll with the Reformed theology, but Martin Luther didn't really have some nice stuff to say about Jewish people. There was Jewish persecution by the hands of Christians. We don't want to talk about up there in Massachusetts and those Salem witch trials and all of that stuff. Oh yeah. People got some wicked stuff in the name of Christ. But see, us as Christians, we can be honest about that stuff and we can talk about that stuff. But these other cults, these black identities cults, these Hebrew roots movements and these Hebrew Israelites and 5%ers and Nation of Islam, see, they can't be truthful with y'all. They claim that they giving y'all the truth. They ain't giving y'all no truth. They're giving you a bunch of lies and a bunch of echo chambers. This blackness and this black identity stuff is a disease. It's a cancer. And I mean, it's running rampant in the black community. You got folks running from the black church. Black folks running out of the church talking about y'all ain't never taught me this and y'all ain't never taught me that. I left the church because there was so much mess and trash going on. And then you look at all of the mess and trash that they got going on in the name of Israel. And it's way worse in the church. I mean, way worse than what you see in the church. Some of the stuff that these Hebrew Israelites are accepting, it's like churches are just like, dang, even the ones that got the mess and the garbage in the church is like, man, we ain't gonna take it that far. But you left the church because it was a whole bunch of mess and trash and garbage going on, and they never taught you anything. So you run to Israel where they're not, where they're teaching you even less, and they teach you a whole bunch of pseudo garbage, trash. That's what it is. Bunch of spit. But listen, the good news is that you're still alive, and you still got a breath of life, the breath of life in you right now. You know, everybody has a chance to repent, turn from their sins, and follow Christ. You know, but one day it's gonna be too late. It's gonna be too late. You know, I used to be one of these God-hating reprobates. So trust me, I'm speaking from experience. That's how I know how destructive this whole blackness and all of this stuff is, because I used to be a part of that. I don't want no part of the Bible. I didn't want no part of Christ. I had the same old ideologies that you guys had. White man destroyed everything. Black man was the original man, and everything was good until that white man crawled out of them caucus mountains. I used to believe in all of that garbage and trash. But thanks be to God that he was able to pull me out of that. And I'm saying that any one of y'all who feel that calling of God and you want to be yanked out of all of that confusion, cry out to him. Reach out to the Lord. He's faithful. He's been faithful, and he's going to continue to be faithful. But this is a warning. When he comes to gather his elect, when he comes to get Christians, those who have washed their robes in the Lamb's blood. I did a video about this earlier this morning. Talked about that earlier this morning. When he comes to get his elect, he's not coming to hopefully wait that y'all get it right. He's not going to come and get some and then come back a little bit later and then get the rest of y'all. No. He's coming back a second time. He's going to gather his elect, and then that's it. That's it. So, you know, you guys have a chance to get right. You know. No, I always do your research too. Always do your research. When you hear something sounds too good to be true, most likely it is. You know. Always be willing to listen to the other side. Don't just listen to one thing and just go, I'm just going to listen to these few people because I resonate with them. Nah, take time to listen to what somebody else got to say. That's why I love debates. I'll sit back. There's been times where I've had to listen to atheists for about an hour, just trash and dog Christianity. But I had to know what they were thinking. I had to get an understanding of what they believed about us. And actually, there's some things I learned about the Christian faith by listening to them. You know how many times I done sat back and watched Sarnetta TV? You know what I'm saying? I had to sit back and listen to that, and I had to listen to Farrakhan and you know, even some of these Hebrew Israelites. I had to sit back and listen to 2 or 3 hours of them just talking and just, you know, I was like, ugh. But I gotta hear what they gotta say. I gotta listen to what they gotta say. You know, because I want an understanding. You know, I had to listen to Muslims. What's that guy's name? I forgot his first name, but D-Dot. That Muslim guy, D-Dot. If you guys have ever heard this guy speak about the Christian faith, I don't think that y'all can last more than 5 or 10 minutes listening to this guy. Watch plenty of videos about that Muslim apologist D-Dot. If you don't know who that is, look him up. It's D-E-E-D-O-T. You know, shoot, man. It's a lot of people are saying a lot of stuff. And as Christians, you know, we got to be fair. We got to be fair. We got to be willing to listen, slow to speak. And number one, you got to know what's in your Bible. You got to know what's in your Bible. You know, because once you know what's in that book, you know, when you hear the Fugazi, you can be able to say, oh, no, that's false. That's totally false. And here's why. You know. But anyway, y'all, I gotta get ready to get up out of here, man. Whew. Yeah, I've been on here what? About an hour and 30 minutes. I did pretty good tonight. I did pretty good tonight. But listen, man, listen, y'all hit that like button on the way out. Okay, y'all go ahead and hit that like button right now as I get ready to get up out of here. And I see Orthodox more. He just got in here. Man, kind of late, brother. Kind of late, brother. But that's all right. I'm gonna leave it up for playback. Listen, man. Yeah, all of my brothers and sisters in here, you know, who will profess the name of Christ. You guys stay strong. Stay strong. Listen, man. This ain't the worst of it. It's probably gonna get worse than this. But you know, let's continue to support each other and love on each other. You know, let's continue to do that. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff being hidden from us. Right. All right, Orthodox more. Yes, Brother Mal Joey. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All glory goes to God. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, man. Let me go ahead and get up out of this comment section. I'll probably be here for another 15 minutes responding to y'all. But listen, as I get ready to head up out of here, make sure you like this video, rate it, share it, subscribe, hit that notifications bell so whenever I get ready to go live, you guys will be the first ones to see it. And with that, you guys have a blessed night, and I'll catch you guys next time, Lord willing.